I'm going to talk about development of rare disease therapies, and what's exciting is you're hearing about all this great science. It's still in animals, some of it's coming to people, but I also want to tell you that the next stage is still a battle. It's not solved in one step. The things will happen and you're going to have to work through it. It's a whole lot easier to get an IND and start a trial than it is to get to approval. And there'll always be challenges. And I'll talk through some of the history of challenges that I've had to deal with, and hopefully give you some sense that you can battle through and get to the next stage. So my own history started as an academic professor, and I gave this story last time I spoke, and I won't go through this in detail, but I started working in labs, I developed an enzyme therapy, I treated some dogs, and it worked really well. We got to people, but boy, what a struggle it was going from the first point, getting some funds, but actually getting into trial, and ultimately needing hundreds of people to be involved, millions of dollars, and lots of challenges. But it did get approved. It can happen, but it is definitely a long and difficult journey. And I funded Ultragenyx just in 2010. It was me and the secretary, and I had a couple $1 million of my own funds. And we wanted to focus on serious metabolic disorders, and we've raised about a couple $2 billion now in that time, and are working on a lot of approvals. We'll talk through some of these in a moment. And I have more than 1,100 employees working on 20 diseases, so it's an exhilarating thing to be thinking about first ever treatments for so many different disorders. So in defining the mission, really what we wanted to do was treat as many rare genetic diseases as possible, because as you heard a little earlier, that we're at that stage, the technologies are there, there's many ways to go forward. We had to develop a high quality team that could do this efficiently as possible. But we did want to set a standard for how to be patient-focused, and words thrown around a lot, but I think one of the key questions we heard about earlier is this issue about access. If we develop a treatment, patients have to get access, and within the US environment, that sometimes is challenging, but we currently guarantee our patients with access one way or another in the US if they're prescribed a product. So it's something we believe in committing to, that if we don't do that, and any product we would develop for Angelman would also be assured that it's available regardless of financial situation in the US. So the problem in all this is that we also have to be really smart in business and finances. We can't just do whatever we have to do. We have to figure out how to make the money work in the right way, and this is all very, very expensive, but if we do it smart and fast, we can help and treat as many rare diseases as possible. This is just a portfolio, just so you get an idea of it. I won't go through all the different ones that are on here, but there's quite a long list, and 4 of them are approved. It can be antibodies, enzymes, small molecules, and we now have a group of gene therapies entering pivotal trials, and also nucleic acid therapies. And the program with genetics is our GTX-102. Sorry. I haven't talked with a mask before. I can't take it off? Better. Struggling with it. Hey. Unleash the beast. Unleash the beast. So it's good because, rebreathing CO2 while talking is definitely not good. So the genetics program, obviously, down on there in the bottom, and we have other programs past this, so yeah, we're really busy. And a number of the team members are here with us today, and I thank all of them for the work we do in all these programs. What I thought would be interesting for something you don't usually see, especially from academic researchers, is what does it actually take to file a drug for approval, right? You probably don't get to see that very often. So I've assembled here for you, from our department that does this work, what's in a filing. What does that look like when you can get approval? And I will highlight for you UX003, that's a MEPSEVI, it's an enzyme therapy for MPS 7. And that filing for approval in the US was 76,000 pages long. 76,000 pages. It was almost 1,100 individual documents. There are only 20 patients in the US on treatment, right? There are probably 100 people worked on this thing to treat the 20 patients, just to give you a grasp. And if you look at our more recent approval, UX007, you can see it was 228,000 pages, 1,700 documents. what's in there is an incredible amount of detail. So when you think about a trial and getting approval, you're thinking, oh, we're going to conduct this trial and get approval. But the trial is just one piece, and there's all these other parts of what it takes, and that's why it ends up costing so much. And that's partly why I'm so gray. It's because of all the work that's gone to get that to happen. But I just thought it'd be good for you to kind of see what it looks like, what it really looks like doing it, and what we end up having to do. I'd also point out this stuff is all done in digital form now, so we have some of these cases 1 million hyperlinks that between documents in this filing, 1 million. And those have to work, otherwise the FDA will send it back to you and reject it. So you can't have any missed links, so you can see what's involved. My own rare disease experience shown here are things both approved products and other unapproved, and been through a lot of programs. And it's not worth going through all the details, but just to say that I've been through a lot, and also one of the reasons I have a lot of gray hair. But the thing that's most important to recognize when you go through all these programs, that all of the successful approved rare disease treatments, they always have at least one, often more than one, really difficult challenge, like you're not sure you're going to make it kind of challenge in the middle of it, and you have to be able to fight through it and get through it. So I think the industry has to see that as we get in trials, things are going to happen. Not just this trial, all the other things will happen. We're going to have to work through it, but we can work through it. And it's important to recognize that happens a lot. We have questions like non-clinical data questions. We've had a lot of that where regulators are uptight or uncertain and are dragging and are holding you up. That could very well happen, particularly in some of the gene therapy ones, which has been an issue. When you're in the clinic, something can happen too. You're treating something for the first time, you will learn things, have to deal with it. And the last thing is manufacturing. Everyone assumes, oh, they're just making the drug. But some of these things are hard to make. And then you have to scale up, and you have to treat a whole bunch of people. And suddenly that gets hard and expensive. And so in all of this, in this struggle, you really have to keep focusing on the science, respond to data, manage the regulators. But I say remember who we serve, because someone earlier said, we serve the regulators. We not serve the regulators, we serve the patients. Regulators we have to manage. They have their perspective, they have their ideas, but we need to get our science correct. That's the investigators and the sponsors, get it right, make good decisions, and then manage the regulators and making sure we're taking care of the patients who have to receive these treatments. So I'll talk through some examples of these different categories of problems, and I'll talk about the Angelman program for GTX-102 that we're working on with genetics. So let's start with the first example. Early in my career, I was actually working on trying to do enzyme therapy of the brain and developed the strategy of putting it in the spinal fluid. Now, you might think that's obvious, but 20 years ago, everyone said that would never work. It was said it would never work. You can't put it in the spinal fluid, it'll never get into the brain. Well, it turned out we did it, and it actually did work, and worked really well. It was actually surprisingly good, and we started developing the first intrathecal enzyme replacement therapy, which was now called Brainura, for a disease called CLN2, a devastating rare disease, and kids get sick maybe at 1 or 2 years of age, and they decline completely within a couple of years. It's very rapid. We had really good dog model data, very exciting. We're moving ahead to the clinic, and the FDA had theoretical concerns. Well, is this tough, giving this protease to the brain? Is something going to happen? Now, we had a lot of good animal data saying, look, it's safe, it's working well. And they said, no, we want you to torture a large number of monkeys for more than a year, repeatedly giving this thing. And this is a very extreme experiment. Kids are dying. The drug was working. And the study would just basically be, really wouldn't be useful, but that's what they were requiring. So to move ahead, the study went ex-US. We actually went to Europe, which is not an uncommon problem. We just bypassed the FDA, go to Europe, where they in fact did not have those concerns. In fact, particularly the UK is a lot more rational and a lot less interested in doing a lot of very long and expensive studies. When I say expensive, I'm talking about several $1 million that you could be using to treat people, right? Torture monkeys. So we went to Europe. Of course, the drug was working because we already proved it worked in the dog, and it worked. But But in the US, some of the patients actually declined and were unable to be part of the trials and died. That's a tragedy, right? That shouldn't happen. But we got it done in Europe. We came back to the US. The drug is now approved in the US. Of course, it doesn't see anywhere. Right? It's a theoretical issue. And this happens a lot. Like theoretical issues. Like we should be looking at the data, not just theories of what can happen. And this is an intrathecal drug that works. It does change the lives of these patients. And this whole same situation happened to us with Vimizim and Mepsevii. Both programs went ex-US first because of theoretical issues being raised. Eventually came back and got approved. Now, the FDA recently wrote a guidance to change this, to align what they were requiring with what others were actually requiring and what was truly necessary for this type of therapy. So they kind of straightened it out, but the idea that they have perfect knowledge and that they have truth, they do not. They just have fears and theories, and sometimes they don't make good decisions. So we have to then figure out a way. If we go ex-US, we're going to press ahead. We're not going to sit and waste time and lose opportunity to treat someone, and we move forward. Now, I've had similar challenges in the clinic. When you get in the clinical trial, and we were working on a drug called aldurazyme for MPS I, a lysosomal disease, another lethal disease. They don't die as fast as CLN2. It takes maybe 10 to 20 years. And when we started this program, everyone said, well, everyone's going to get allergic reactions. They'll be unable to use this drug. It'll fail. And we were very worried about allergic reactions because the kids don't make this protein, and if we give it to them, they might create an antibody to it. We first started, everything looked good. We were feeling all right. We got a few patients treated, everything looked fine. We into the fourth infusion in the fourth patient, a little kid here named Spencer. He had a terrible allergic reaction. And we were running around trying to support him, and he was having a lot of symptoms, abdominal cramps and pain, and he had rashes and, screaming and crying, and we managed it. We treated him. We stabilized him. And then I went to talk to the parents. This is all happening within an hour. And I looked at the parents, and what I didn't tell you is that his two sisters, who also have MPS, were in the room when this reaction occurred. And I look at the parents, and they look at me, and I know immediately what they're thinking. They think all their kids are going to die because this reaction means their kid's rejecting the treatment. He'll never be able to get it. And you could tell the look in their eyes, and I told them, we're not going to stop. This is just an allergic reaction. We have tools, we've got drugs, we can change administration, and we can work it. So in the week between that event, and he had a scheduled infusion next week, we skin tested him, we tested Western blots, we studied all this stuff. We figured out, looks like a complement-mediated reaction, a type of allergic reaction. We knew we had to adjust how we administered the drug, how to pre-medicate. We gave him the infusion next week. Nothing, no reaction. Fine. He went on for years, and the other kids got treated too. But there was a moment where you're thinking, this is it. But it's not it. You have to fight for it. Now, Palynziq's another treatment for PKU, another enzyme. When they first started doing it, they were getting tremendous allergic reactions, immune complexes, hurting the kidney, causing rashes, joint pains. And they thought, oh, it's over. But as you know, it's not over. Because the drug was really potent, they need to figure out how to work this with the patients. And it turned out, and this is how simple it can be, all they needed to do was start at a lower dose and slowly work up the dose. And if you slowly work up the dose, then you don't have that problem. Now, last week, I had a note from a family, and I went to it was called Tuxes for Tea, a fundraiser like 15 years ago in San Francisco for her kid who has PKU. And the note said to me, hey, Dr. Kass, just want to update you. Tia's doing great. She's on Palynziq, changed her life. No problem. She's getting daily injections, and she can eat and without any risk of brain damage from eating too much phenylalanine. Life changed, right? Again, dire predictions, and then you get over it and you figure it out. So making enzyme products can be, making rare disease drugs can be really difficult too, and I was particularly, because we also work in gene therapy, it is incredibly expensive, and I know We heard about the cost of the therapies, but what the problem is, what you didn't hear, is that some of the therapies are still costing $1 million to make them. And so if they cost $1 million, then what are they going to charge you for having them is the challenge, right? Getting control of that is hard because some of them are quite difficult to make. That doesn't mean it can't be done. That means we got to fight for it and work on it. But the truth is, a lot of rare disease treatments are expensive, and we don't have as much funding and support to really go on and on figuring out how to fix it. We had an enzyme therapy called Nagazyme, which was incredibly hard to make. In fact, 2 companies that started the project had dropped it because they couldn't make it. And we worked very hard to get it there. And inch by inch, we got it improved. It is approved now, about 1,000 patients getting treated with the drug now. But very, very hard. Another program, Kuvan, had a drug that was so unstable that it had to be stored at -80 and -80°C freezer. Well, not many of you have -80° freezers at home. How are you going to give that drug to your kid? And we were told that would be impossible. But we knew the drug worked, so there's a reason to try to figure it out. Well, it turned out just a couple companies with a trivial idea determined that if they just left the drug in a crystal, like a little crystal, it was stable. But if you ground it up into powder, it would oxidize. So we made a tablet that was like sort of like a raisin scone. The crystals are the raisins, and the tablet is just kind of goo around it. And we made it stable, and it could sit on your counter, room temperature. It's an approved drug globally now and treated. So those can be solved, even manufacturing issues. But they will happen, and you will, even particularly in gene therapies, there will be struggles to get there, to get enough and to get it to be done well. So let's talk about the most recent situation with GTX-102. Been through a lot of wars, so obviously now this is one we were very excited about. We were quietly seeing efficacy changes that were compelling for us. And then, as you heard from Scott Stromat, the patients, when they got to this level, a higher dose level, as they were being titrated, they got into a safety problem, and which was this lower extremity weakness problem. The key here now is, what does the data show? When we look very detailed at the data, it's pretty clear this is just a regional thing, that the effect we're seeing is right around, affects the lower extremity only, not the other nerves elsewhere. It's only right where the drug was being applied. And it's based on the neuro exam, the MRI, and then the CSF. It was really kind of an inflammation thing. But this is the kind of thing I think is very manageable because it's a localized effect, not a systemic effect. It wasn't affecting the whole body. It's just that spot where you put the drug. To me, that's the kind of thing that would very much fit a change in administration strategy, right? So you're not leaving too much drug locally too long. By keeping the doses lower, by doing the changes in administration, get the drug to mix quicker, don't let it sit there and cause that injury. Now, when we go to the FDA to talk about this, they took a very conservative stand. As I've told you before, that's kind of common for them. And when this event happened, the genetics team and the Ultragenyx team both agreed immediately we should open up ex-US sites. Now, I'm sorry to say to you, that's one of our first things we do. We go ex-US because we know that they will be extremely conservative, and we don't know how long it'll take. Ex-US, they liked our plan. There was no hassle. Meetings went well. They agreed. We moved ahead. And the FDA, we went through, I would say, multiple rounds of just discussions and filings. And despite the fact they told us they were going to work with us and how important it was, we unfortunately lost a year messing around, which I'm obviously not happy about because all these kids are waiting. And even then, they didn't let us treat the kids who were in the first trial, the first 5. So our plan right now will be to we're treating patients now ex-US. In the US, we'll start, but at a lower dose. We'll take all of this data sometime next year, pull it together, and synchronize what goes on in US and ex-US, and hopefully expand the study at that point if we've shown safety, and continue working forward. The FDA then will see this other data, which we think will be sufficient to let us go and get going. It shouldn't have taken so long, but as I said, been through a lot of battles. We battle it, we're back in the clinic, we're moving ahead. And we feel very confident about the value of GTX-102 in Angelman syndrome. But it's the first step. It's one treatment. You've heard a lot of strategies coming forward, and I think it's important to work all the shots always. But I feel very good about the ability to change this administration strategy and get the benefits without the localized effect. Just for a little bit of detail for all of you, in the UK and Canada, we're starting at 3.3 mgs. They'll get 2 doses, and then if they're doing okay, they can go up to 5 mgs. If they'll get 2 more doses, and that's the 4-dose loading protocol. And then they would go to, past that, they can step up even further. So we can allow patients to continue to titrate if they haven't achieved sufficient efficacy. We think, though, that the 16.6 mgs loading that you'll get in the cohort 4 of the young ones, and the 25 for the old ones over 4 doses, that level is a level that we saw an effect before, so we feel that the loading should be sufficient to get some effect. We'll have to find out, is it the optimal effect? In the US, we're starting very low. People ask me why that number. It's because it's 1/10 the lowest dose at which we saw an adverse effect. It was just an arbitrary choice. I personally decided not to try to escalate in the US. It was partly just getting through the door with the FDA and not adding any more complexities for another round of discussions. We stayed at 2. There is potential benefit at 2, but we think the higher dose is probably going to be better. But we'll take all that data and get everyone synchronized on an optimal dose when we get this first set of data. So starts us off, get going, and we'll keep pushing ahead. Now, we want to get the first 5 treatment patients who were excited to continue. They need to get started. FDA had resisted us doing that, but we will come back to them. We won't forget them. They contributed a lot in that beginning, and we'll come back to them. It's just taking time. And if we have to, maybe they have to be moved to Canada. There are other reasons why some people want to move to Canada, but this might be another one. But anyways, rare disease treatments, you'll always find challenges. And that's why you have to be able to learn, adapt, and fight through it. And the community now, as you get in there, just be ready for it. Stuff's going to happen. We're going to battle. Don't get too high or too low on this. You got to be ready for a struggle, and it will be a good struggle, though, because as was pointed out earlier, there actually is a struggle that can happen. You're not lost and forgotten. There are technologies now, and there's strategies that can work, and that's why it's such a great battle to take on for your kids. We've had to do lots of things in the past. I won't go back through all of it, but we're committed to pushing ahead now, figuring out an Angelman treatment, at least a first treatment, and the possibility of changing the development future of children is something truly phenomenal. I think I've been involved in a lot of programs, I know some of my team has too, never seen any developmental function ever improve in a trial, right? We almost always are trying to prevent something from being lost. To see an improvement is very special, and we hope Angelman is just the first disease where that's possible, and hope there will be others too, but the possible change in developmental future is real, and we're excited, so we need to get it done. So thank you.